Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. All things Middle Earth here with a quick video talking about 7 things that I think we need added to the Return to Moria to make the playthrough experience better, as well as the replayability more viable. Because right now, unless you're a crazy diehard fan and you're trying all kinds of different things out, you're probably going to play through one time and that's going to be it. Again, maybe if you play with friends, there'd be a different one. But I think for the average player, you play through, you complete it. There's not a lot of reason to jump back in and keep replaying it over and over again. So I'd love to see some things added to improve the overall experience just on that first playthrough, but also things that potentially give us more options for replayability if people want to do that. So I've got 7 things. I want to share them with you guys. I'd love to hear what you think down below. And as always, comment if you guys agree with them or you disagree, or maybe there's an idea you have that I didn't mention. I'd love to see those as well, and I'll reply to as many as I can, because I'd love to just kind of see where the community stands and kind of what things we think could be the most impactful for the game moving forward. So that's the intro. Let's go ahead and get into it. 7 things that we need. All right, I will say some of these start out a little bit more basic and I think are very much likely to happen. But as we progress through, they might get more complex or more game-changing, and I don't know if those will happen. But I think some of them are very, very simple, but could have a big impact, at least for me. The first one being a way to destroy items. Now, if you've played through, you know there's durability on your items. So as I'm using my weapons, using my pickaxes, whatever it is, they're going to take durability damage and they can break. But when they break, they don't just go away. They stay in your inventory as being broken, but just can't be used until you repair them. So as you're playing, as you upgrade all of your different items, you're going to have just kind of trash, whether it be in random chests or just in random spots on the map, all the old stuff you're not using. Now, there are a few options like weapon display racks, armor stands, as well as the wall display, which can display a few things. So I think some players could potentially use armor stands to display all their armor as they progress through. But in a world with multiple players and people dying and building new armor, or again, whatever it is, there's just going to be a lot of junk. And honestly, the only way that I've figured out how to deal with this is just throwing it off like the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, or any area where there's kind of a endless void. You can just throw items off there to get rid of them, but that's not really a great solution. So some kind of incinerator or grindstone that kind of grinds things down into scrap metal or whatever to let you clear out the things that you don't want, I think would be very, very helpful and just make things a little bit more clean as you're progressing through. Everyone could have one on their base, and if you want to get rid of stuff, you just drop them in there and they're gone. Or at least some means or some way to craft something that could like serve as that. Whereas in other games, like something as simple as Minecraft, you can just kind of put lava between some rocks and you can throw stuff in there and it works. So something as simple as that, but as complex as like some dwarven incinerator, could be very, very cool. So I'd love to see the ability to destruct items in the game. Okay, number 2 is going to be either signs that we can put up and, you know, put on chests or just put on the ground or whatever it is, or some kind of a universal item frame that we can use similar to the wall display, but that can be used for all items. Because if you're like me, or I mean, anybody that's playing and has any organization at all, you're going to have several chests with different things inside them. And yeah, maybe you have it memorized and you just know where all your stuff is. But for me, sometimes I forget and I got to click through and try and find the exact thing I'm looking for. And if I could label this one as just being gold coins and label this one as being precious gems and whatever it is, I think it would make a lot more sense. And that'd be very, very simple just to add a little sign that could be put on them. Or again, some kind of an item frame type thing that you can actually put anything in, as opposed to the actual like wall display now that we have that you can't put just anything you want into it. So some kind of way to label and help us organize things for those of us who are building more complex bases would be very, very nice. All right, number 3, something else I'd like to see is more lootable items to find in the world. There's really not any of them. If you break open some barrels or crates, sometimes you'll get some random things to drop. But pretty much when you're exploring, you don't find anything kind of left behind by dwarven ancestors or whatever that you can actually use. I think this would potentially go well with the kind of incinerator idea, because sometimes there'd be stuff that's just kind of old and junky and you want to break it down and get the resources out. Again, you could find an old mithril coat and break it down into what, you know, some usable mithril. That'd be cool. But pretty much for me, I walk into this room and the only things of note are like that there's a statue to repair, there's a Durin's axe fragment we've already gotten, and that's kind of it. I mean, you can see there's ores to mine, so you could mine silver over there if you want to. But for the most part, there's not a whole lot of reason to like really explore inside of rooms. And at least for me, if I go into a room that's a dead end, like if I go into this room right here, I'm going to walk in the entrance and pretty much identify what type of room it is, if there's anything I want to actually grab in it or fight or whatever. But there's no purpose right now in exploring in any real like serious capacity, especially when you're in an area like Zanzibar where you have all the kind of old ruined buildings and those things. It'd be cool to go through there. And again, I'm not saying you'd be looting just all kinds of stuff. But I think the ability to find things in some buildings would add a reason to explore a little bit more. And again, they could be usable things, they could be helpful resources, or they could just be some kind of ruined dwarven thing that could be potentially broken down and like actually used as helpful resources. So more reason to explore by kind of means of there being more kind of left behind dwarven things, I think would be very cool. All right, the next point is very, very simple. And I just think this game needs a difficulty modifier. Everyone likes to play differently. So you might be playing in and you're not interested in fighting a lot of orcs all the time. You just want to rebuild stuff and explore and you enjoy that. And you might want to crank it down a little bit so you just don't have to worry about the fighting. Or maybe you're someone who likes to play through and really have a challenge and really take time going through every single area and fighting everyone, and you want to increase the difficulty. Or you might be like me, we started a hardcore playthrough in our world, which means if you die, you are eliminated. And the ability to just set the settings in the world to that would actually kick the player out once they die, I think would just, again, that would really help with replayability, because you could play through one time on normal and then decide, you know what, I want to try it again, but I want it to be more difficult this time. Or I want to rebuild Moria, but I don't want to deal with all the fighting because I already did that. So let's put it on easy, or even like a peaceful mode. Again, I feel like if you bought the game, the option to just kind of slightly adjust the difficulty and how you interact with the environment would be, I think, a very big thing that I don't think would be too difficult to just change the damage levels being done by mobs, or change their health, or change the damage you do, or whatever it is. But I think that would add some replayability. And again, depending on what you like, it might make your experience way better on your initial playthrough. All right, the next one, this is a big one. I think a lot of people would appreciate that. And that is just more building freedom. Now, whether this came at the end game or not, it doesn't really matter to me. I kind of hope there would be more. And then when we beat the game, really nothing changes at all. You don't unlock the ability to craft more things or rebuild some of the ruined dwarven statues. There are broken statues that you just can't repair in different areas because they've been kind of like covered in orc stuff, and you can break off the kind of orc, you know, whatever crap on it. But for the most part, like, there are some things that are just going to be ruined and you can't ever change. A good example of this, I thought, was if you want to use a room like this, which is one of my favorite rooms in the entire game, and you wanted to make a really cool base here, and you go to place a grand hearth, it's going to be very hard to center it in the area because it's kind of off like the normal axis. So, I mean, you can put it up on certain walls like this, but as you know, if you wanted to center it like behind this big structure here, it's going to be crooked like this. So I think the ability to rotate items more differently, whatever it is, there are a lot of different things. And honestly, a video just on kind of the rebuild mechanics that are needed could be its own video. So I'm definitely like making this quick, but in several ways, I think the building needs to be improved. And again, if that happened at the end game, so there was incentive to beat the game, and then you unlock some building features that allow you to go through and maybe have more impact on the kind of already pre-existing structures in the area. Again, something like this is one of the very last rooms. It actually is the very last room in the game. And there's just like this broken kind of rubble here that you can do nothing with. You can't get rid of it. You can't break it. So it's just always there. The stairs are really broken apart, and we actually spent like 3 hours building stairs on top of them that we kind of got to look nice, but it was very, very difficult. And again, there's just always going to be this boulder here that we can't get rid of. So the ability, whether it be in game or not, to change some of the like more pre-existing dwarven structure. I get it that it's like ancient dwarven structure and you're not going to get in there with like a very basic pickaxe and start breaking it apart. But at least at the end of the game, the ability to start rebuilding that, because that's kind of the whole kind of thing, is like, now we're rebuilding Moria. I think improving that would be very nice. Okay, another thing that might be something people disagree on, but I'd love to hear, especially in this point, what you guys think. I think if there was some skill point system in the game, now again, maybe it would come down the road because it might make things more complex. But to me, after you fight your first couple hordes of orcs, or, you know, a couple patrols, just kind of endlessly fighting them gets a little old without there being any experience points that are given, and there, you know, not being really any customizability in your play style because of skill points. So typically in a survival game, you could choose that there are things you go into. You know, if I wanted to run some kind of a stealth build, if there was a reason to, where I could crouch and walk around and not be detected as much, or I could, you know, run some kind of a cardio build where I'm able to sprint without restriction, or I do more melee or ranged or whatever. It could be somewhat simple, but some kind of differentiation between players and how they prefer to play would be nice. And again, when you have a horde, or you have a patrol coming through, there's actually a reason to take, I mean, other than them being annoying and hitting your stuff, but there's a reason to take them out, because you want skill points so you can keep leveling up. This could also be associated with unlocking different things. I think it could really get complex, which would make it very, very exciting. But overall, I think adding even a basic skill point system would be a huge improvement on the playthrough. It would also add a lot of replayability as well, because let's say I played through and I did a huge melee build where I was just this tanky melee character, and now I want to do some kind of stealth build where I use a crossbow and do extra damage when I'm attacking from the shadows, or again, whatever it is. I think a lot of games do very simple mechanics like that, which could make it replayable because you want to try a different type of build out. All right, and the last point, and this could also piggyback off of the skill point system being put in if that was something that happened, is actual randomly generated worlds or a random world generation. Right now, the world seed, to my knowledge, all this controls is a different kind of boxes or squares on your map. It just controls where they are, but you're going to have all the same ones. The story's going to be the same, and you have to kind of do the same objectives to get through. So I think this is one of the biggest reasons that the game isn't super replayable, because once you've played through, and whether or not your troll is in the top left or the bottom right that you need to go attack or whatever it is, doesn't really change the playthrough experience that much. I think it was interesting when I first started seeing it that, you know, it wasn't super, you know, copy paste, but at the end of the day, it's not different enough, I don't think. So I think what would be very cool is if the kind of main storyline for this game kind of became the default world that players join in and play the first time to learn the game. And the story walks them through everything, and people can enjoy that. But then beyond that, you could load up and create randomly generated worlds that are much more open and much more random. Maybe they add more mining that you can do. Again, you could get really complex with it. But I think instead of having a story that walks you through and that's how you unlock everything, having a skill point system that, you know, that's how you can unlock new weapons and armors and tools, because you're statting into those things to unlock the recipes or whatever it is. I think that could be a potential, which again, it's very different from how the game is now, but a lot of games have like their default world that you play on, and you can also do a random one. So I think the random one would be the thing that would make it more playable than anything else, because then it would actually be random and a different experience. And it's not just replaying through a story, it's actually just surviving. So again, I think a lot of these things build off of each other. I think the last two especially could work really well together. But to me, they kind of are somewhere between quality of life and actual like major game changes. So I am curious what you guys think. But I think honestly, if all these things happened, there's, you know, most of the big game changes are still optional. So if you don't like them, you know, you can keep the difficulty on normal, or you can play the normal world or whatever it is. But I feel like if there are optional changes to allow players more choices, I think that's only a win. So I'd love to see all of them, but I'm curious which one you guys like the most, or if there are things that you think would be more game-changing and kind of better for the game than anything I mentioned today. Comment that down below, and I'll reply if I can. But that'll do it for this one, and I'll see you all in the next video.